You're a busy professional. You don't have time for fluff. You need strategies that work, and you need them fast. Welcome to Busy Pro Fast Wellness with me, your host, Alan Welsh. We're here to give you science-backed hacks and actionable tips to boost your focus, minimize friction, and maximize your results. Less time, more impact. It's time to get well, stay strong, and thrive. Let's get to it. Hello and welcome back to Busy Pro Fast Wellness. My guest today is Charlotte Stebbing-Mills, who is a wellbeing specialist, author and co-founder of the Wellness Theory. She spent nearly 2 decades working in health and performance, from cardio rehab with the NHS, which is the National Health Service in the UK, to large-scale corporate wellness programs across the GCC, which is the Gulf Cooperation Council in the Middle East. And after experiencing burnout herself, she rebuilt from the ground up and now helps individuals and organizations move from survival mode to sustainable high performance. Charlotte, great to have you here on the pod today. A warm welcome to you. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you for having me. It is a warm welcome. I love that you went into like podcast intro host voice. I like that. That was cool.
Well, it's all part of the, the acting skills, etc. You have to. I make an effort wherever I possibly can. Well spotted.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. I appreciate the effort.
Yeah, great. Anyway, it's a real pleasure to have you on, and I'm really looking forward to sort of delving into some of these questions. And I do really enjoy speaking to various people because I learn so much as well when I'm doing this, as I mentioned off camera earlier on. So it's a great experience, for me and hopefully for listeners. So Charlotte, you have seen like both extremes, from clinical recovery and corporate burnout. So what's the fastest habit a busy professional can use today to protect their energy, would you say?
It's such a great question to kick off with because energy is like the number one thing. If we get to manage that, we manage everything else. So I think the first thing here really is making sure that we're actually looking for the power leaks first. So before we add anything, we look at where is our power actually leaking. When I say power, like our energy, where is it actually leaking from? That's the fastest habit, right? It's to stop doing something rather than it's to start doing something. If anything, you gain time back often from doing that. And that's typically where stress comes into the mix, right? Because if we're stressed out, we're typically losing energy from there, and that's where it's kind of game over. So looking for the power leaks and then looking for the power ups.
Brilliant. Power leaks. That's something I've not actually heard about at all. I was recently reading a book. It was called Quit, and it was actually identifying areas in your life which you can shed to get rid of those things which are probably not going to be very helpful to you. So I guess that would be a power leak, would it? If you're doing something which has some sort of negative energy. Yeah,
Yeah,
is that be right?
exactly that. Yeah. And you work with busy professionals, right? A lot of your audience are busy professionals. The last thing you want to do is add something else in. And the almost that high performance, busy professional nature is to add more. What can I do more of? What can I do more of? And actually, when we start to take that out and we look, okay, where is our energy leaking already? Like, is it poor food choices? Is it dehydration? Is it chasing validation and proving ourselves? What's really in your energy? And plug that gap, and then you're good to start adding stuff if you even need to anymore.
If you need to, yeah. That was actually reminded me of somebody else I spoke to a while ago who talked about the fact that he would minimize everything that was going on in his life. He would shed those things, try to scale back and minimize as well. So I guess that would kind of feed into that sort of same thing. And what do people think works? I mean, sometimes people think certain things work, but actually drain their energy. Can you give any particular examples on that?
Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you look anywhere online, you'll see a lot of it as well. It's like, the morning routines, and you must do a cold plunge. You must do, wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You must go for a run as soon as your feet touch the floor. It's all of that kind of hustle, go mindset that I think often does more harm than good. I specialize in stress specifically with high performers, and, it's the classic psychology is we want to apply those things, but the reality is so different to that. More often than not, it's about doing less, doing more of what does work.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's so tempting, isn't it, to go along and follow those gurus online, and you see them as I can think of people now off the top of my head, and I follow them on videos or YouTube, and they do get up at that time. They do those cold plunges, and I've even gone for a phase, not the cold plunges, but getting up at 5 o'clock
Yeah.
and trying to fit it all that in, and yeah,
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it. My husband loves a cold plunge. I love waking up early in the morning,
yeah,
but it's about knowing what's right for you. And I think
mm,
that's the key that I think is often missing. It's like we're almost looking externally to be told what to do, so much so
mm,
that now we get lost in like data on a wrist boot band or an aura ring that we're
yeah,
forgetting to actually listen to our own needs and our own bodies. And I think that's something that we're continually seeing a disconnect for people.
yeah.
And then when we're disconnected from ourselves, then we have less energy, right? But to the point of your question.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Good. I'm glad you mentioned the aura ring and the wristband because that's something which I have shed as well. I now have a traditional watch, but I did have a Garmin, and I thought, you know what? I'm sort of getting to the point where I'm constantly looking and constantly monitoring all the time, and it's actually, if anything, it's kind of mildly stressful to think, oh,
Yeah.
how many hours sleep did I get last night? How many of that was REM or not? So I
Yeah.
just decided to shed the smart watch and just put on a traditional watch that tells the time. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I
think
know exactly what you mean on that.
there's a
Yeah.
time and place for all of it, isn't there? I think, right? So it's, I'm similar to you. Like right now, I've got no devices, but I will go through phases, and I will be
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm in an acceleration phase of my life right now. I want to make sure I'm kind of tracking and seeing things. With a lot of our clients, we will track things like HRV, so we can keep
Mm.
an eye on kind of their stressors and that kind of stuff. It's also an accountability thing as well. So I think if you're using it intentionally, it's like any of these things. If you use
Mm.
something intentionally, why you're doing it, and it's not taken away from you,
Yeah.
then there's no harm to it. But I love the fact that you, Alan, know yourself well enough to know that the Garmin it brings more stress than it does good.
I mean, I'll use it for a race or something when it's important, but I don't want to live
Yeah,
by it.
exactly.
That's all. You
Intentional.
choose the right
Yeah,
time to use these things, and you don't
I like
let
that.
them interfere with the actual day-to-day life.
That's
So
it.
that's to
Yeah.
the detriment of what you're doing on that day-to-day life. So I don't really fancy that at all.
Mm.
But yeah, good. And also, I'd like to bring in some of your own experience because you hit burnout yourself, and so what's the biggest mistake that high performers make when trying to push through that phase of potential burnout?
I think it's such a good question because that is kind of the problem. That is the mistake, is that we think we can push
Yeah.
through, right? And I think like that's really the key, is that thinking that we're the exception to the rule and stress won't harm us. It's like, no,
Yeah.
that happens to other people, not me. And when we adopt that mindset, and it's very typical, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of giggling along because I just recognize myself in it.
Yeah.
Um, from before, but I think it's just so important to recognize that actually it's a good idea, but it doesn't work in practice. It's like driving, a Formula One car, but well, any car actually, but the warning lights are on.
Yeah.
The car still moves. It still can go fast. It can still look impressive. It can still keep driving
Yeah.
until it can't anymore.
Yeah.
And then you have to pay attention to the
Yeah.
fact that you've ignored the warning signs, and usually then the problem ends up being worse than what it was if we'd intervened earlier. And I
Yeah.
think we kind of have a bit of a disconnect sometimes in our psychology around that.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. So that in effect, it's quite insidious, the whole process, isn't it? Because you're not really
Yeah.
aware and you're inside that cycle, and it's just suddenly something will hit you one day when you just feel it, and that's it. You can't really carry on because you've
Yeah.
had enough, and yeah.
It is.
So
And
yeah, go on.
I was just going to add this. Sorry, Alan. Is if you know, it's different for everybody as well as to what that pushing through looks like.
Mm,
And I think sometimes there's a picture or a connotation to burnout that it must mean that total body collapse. Actually, it's not. Often it's something that kind of sneaks in, like you said, almost insidiously, but
mm,
it can be through your behaviors that you're acting perhaps out of the ordinary. Or for me, it was very much mental health. I got to a point where it was just so much kind of almost past history that I hadn't necessarily dealt with yet. And it kind of crept up on me years later. And I was like, what is
mm,
going on here? And I was like, I didn't understand what I was experiencing because I
right.
was never taught. I never didn't learn about mental health and emotional well-being in schools. Even back when I was doing my qualifications for cardiac rehab and throughout all kind of the health and wellness qualifications, 20 years ago, they
Yeah.
didn't talk about things like that. So it can look so different. And a lot of people often think, well, it's just a physical thing, but
Yeah.
actually it's not. It's not just just when you're too tired. It's all of the things that come with it. And I think it's just
Yes.
important to mention. Maybe some listeners are thinking, well, what is that? What does that even look
That's
like?
good. Yeah.
And it's based on the person.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually you've made an effort to explain that, because it is sort of a very generic term that people bandy around, and it's nice to have some sort of idea of what that actually would manifest itself in at that burnout itself. Because for
Yeah.
me, when I think about it, I've always thought for me it's quite mental. Where you're saying other people think it's physical, and
Interesting.
I do make that distinction. Weirdly enough, sometimes you might be physically tired,
Yeah.
or you might be sleepy tired, and there are two
Mhm.
things that would
Yeah.
work in a physical sense. But the
Yeah.
mental one is when you're cluttered and
Yeah.
you really can't function anymore. You lose all your focus, and then you start to lose even a sense of a purpose.
Yeah.
And I guess
Exactly.
that would be, lots of these things can play into that term of burnout in itself. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key is to be able to recognize when your own patterns are changing,
Mm,
right? So what you've just described there is exactly that, right? It's knowing that actually you used to be more focused. It's recognizing that, oh, that's a bit off and it's been off for a while, right? Whether that be
yeah.
physical or whatever it is. And I think that's often like the first signal that we should pay attention to is something significantly different than what it was before, and has it been significantly differently for a while? Because that's usually a red flag that we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, good, good, good. And if someone is close to burnout, even though they might not know it, but now that we've spoken about it, and possibly people might think, oh, well, maybe I should reflect on that a little bit. But if they are close to it, is there a sort of step that they can take in the next 24 hours to help themselves, would you
Yeah, I
say?
mean, the first thing would be recognizing, right? Like, what is the change in your own pattern? Like, what is it
Mm,
you're actually noticing? That's the first thing, is the awareness piece, but also being compassionate. And
okay.
that sounds a bit vague, but actually, sometimes when we're feeling burnt out, it's almost like that. Sometimes there can be a sense of shame or frustration around it, and it's like,
Mm,
well, I can do it. Everybody else can do it. Why can't I do it? Or I thought I'd recovered from this, or I thought I'd taken enough rest at the weekend, and I still feel
yeah.
like this. There can be a lot of chatter. So I think being compassionate and just take a breath and just create enough space to ask yourself, what do I need right now? I can see that this
Mm,
pattern is has shown up for me. This is out of the norm for me. If I was being really kind to myself, what would I need in this moment right now? And just see
mm,
what comes up and do that,
yeah.
whatever that is.
Yeah, good, good. And that pattern as well, I mean, that could be something like maybe becoming slightly impatient at times, or it could be just, oh yeah, well, snapping at people unnecessarily because you feel that you're under too much pressure, and so that could be an
Yeah.
indication of that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
some other common ones would be like your usual recovery methods just don't work anymore. So
mm,
maybe someone used to, have a bit of downtime at the weekend or go to the gym or something, but they're still not recovering or sleeping and that kind of stuff.
right.
Neglecting what you value is a real common one.
Okay.
Start almost putting yourself last.
Yep.
A lot of people do that anyway, but more so than normal. And that any kind of like blaming or victim mentality that pops in, that's something that really comes into play when we're depleted.
Right.
And another really common one is like withdrawal. Like maybe you used to be more social and now you're not. You just sort of making plans and then you cancel them at last minute or something. Or even
Right.
escapism where you're leaning into, maybe a bit too social, or constant scrolling or constant Netflix, like some kind of escapism. And
Right.
all of these things are okay in small doses, but it's just
Yes.
over time that's when they become
Yes.
problematic. So I'm glad that you mentioned, some examples. I'm happy that you mentioned those things about patience and stuff as well, because it's so important to be able to recognize it.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to think of something that came off the top of my head so that we can put it into some context. But now that you've mentioned, you've given us all those other examples, I'm thinking to myself, oh gosh, you said something there that could apply to me. I've become
Oh, there you
quite
go. Do a
unsociable
live
compared to
one.
what I used to be. I used to be a social butterfly, and now I'm sort of, all right, okay, I'll avoid those things. Oh no, it's somebody's birthday. Sugar, I've got to go along to their birthday
No,
party.
but it can come from different places, right?
I
It
know,
might
I
just
know.
be that, your
That
preferences
could
have
be an
changed.
age
So
thing. That could be an age thing as well.
could be age, could be preference. Yeah, but it's worth exploring, right? Just in case.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I better take that on board and nip that one in the bud. Okay, yeah, I'll be out partying tomorrow. Okay.
That last we've seen of Alan. Sorry to your listeners.
Anyway, so another thing I like to sort of discuss, because you're talking about moving from surviving to thriving. So, what's one simple system that people can use to stay in that thriving zone consistently?
Yeah, again, so it's a great question, and I love how it's framed. Because the way a lot of people think is that we want to stay thriving consistently, but we have
Yeah.
to, I think, recognize and be really real with our human nature is that we don't always stay thriving, right? I mean, I think if we immediately start with that premise, I think we're setting ourselves up to fail a little
I
bit.
think so. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You're right,
it's,
actually.
especially if you're already a high performer, which Alan, you clearly are. Just you can tell. The short time we've known each other, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's
Yeah.
just being kind to ourselves to be like, okay, well, let's not expect this 100% to look the same as the 100% yesterday. It might be different. So it's important to recognize there are three core zones, right?
Okay.
We've got our surviving zone,
Yep.
when we're kind of just trying to get through the day and we're almost reactive. We're trying to conserve as much energy as possible
Yeah.
in these moments and just trying to
Yeah.
get through. And we've got like our striving zone,
Okay. Yep.
which is where we're productive, we're capable, often we're pushing, we're trying our best, but sometimes we rely a bit too much on the output when we're in that space. It's kind of a bit of a danger of the striving space.
Okay.
And then we go into thrive, right? And that's where we're looking at being really regulated and being able to ground ourselves and being able
Right.
to, move with the ebbs and flows of perhaps some of our daily and life stresses. That's where we're
Okay.
usually more energized, connected. We all know what it's like to feel good, right? Like that's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
what
For
we're looking
sure.
at.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's key, first of all, is to just to, give ourselves the grace to say it's okay to move in and out of those. And it's okay to have a preference to want to
Yeah.
thrive. But
Yeah.
to be able to thrive, we have to navigate that system, right?
Yes.
And I kind of call it the three N's, where we have to notice, name, and navigate,
Okay.
right? So the system to manage it really is recognizing which zone am I in? Am I surviving? Am I striving? Or am I thriving? There's no
Yes.
judgment required. Just which zone am I in? And then naming that experience, right? What is it I'm noticing about myself? Am I feeling quite safe and comfortable? Am
Yeah.
I feeling the need to really push? Am I trying to prove myself? Do I need to pay attention to the pace that I'm in? Like, what are you noticing? What within that experience?
Yeah.
I think it's really naming the experience, and then asking yourself, what do you actually need whilst you're in that zone? And
Okay.
then the navigate, the third end is to actually meet your need, right? Like, how do you actually meet it? So what boundary do you might need to put in? Maybe you need to move a bit more. Maybe you need to sleep better. Maybe you need to communicate something to somebody. But
Right.
that will help you shift in and out of survive, strive,
Yes.
and thrive.
Yeah. 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 That's fantastic. I mean, I'm as you're speaking, and I'm taking everything on board, and I've even made notes, etc. But it's made me think of something which is completely out
Mm.
of of the things I wanted to talk about, because you must have clients at times who you it's difficult to that maybe there's an ego issue, and as you mentioned earlier on that sometimes people haven't got those tools in place to be compassionate enough.
Yeah.
So how do you sort of get over that sometimes? How do you get that across to the client, or bridge that gap, because there might be that, oh, I'm okay, I'm fine, and they haven't got those tools in place to be more
Yeah.
compassionate. Yeah, I'm just
Such a good question, because self-compassion has been a huge part of my personal journey as well. I was
right.
always the hardest person on myself, and now
Yeah,
like my friends and my husband will be like, no, she's too nice to self, like, so it's almost like an extreme difference. And not
yeah,
because I've done anything like miraculous, but really it's been a case of understanding why. And we do see this a lot with clients, especially high performers that are really tough on themselves, is
yeah.
understanding why are we not being compassionate, or where is the gap in that skill set, and where did that come from? Because
Right.
often we learn about compassion from our caregivers and from our conditioning,
Mm,
and sometimes we learn if it's okay. Sometimes we just learn through modeling what we had or what we didn't have. It's not right or wrong, it just is what we've been exposed to.
yeah.
So sometimes we have to actually be shown what that looks like, right? We have to maybe imagine, how would you speak to your best friend, or how would you speak to a child in this scenario?
Yeah.
And that sometimes is a nice little hack to be like, okay, well, actually, I'd say this to them. Okay, well, why don't we just try that and saying it to yourself? Just
Mm,
try that on and see if we get a better result. And
okay.
over time, you gradually start to improve that. But that I would definitely say it's a case of looking at why,
Mm,
and where have we learned our model of compassion, and then
okay.
perhaps enter into some new models of what that might look like.
Good. Good. I love this model, actually, of reframing how you would speak to somebody as if possibly they're a different character, like a young
Yeah.
person, and you think, oh, well, how can I phrase it this way in order to get my point across. That's really useful. Yeah, great. I mean, you might have already answered this other question that I have. What's the biggest trap people fall into when trying to optimize their well-being, possibly?
It's a bit similar to what I said earlier, actually. It's failing
Yeah,
to see
yeah,
that, we don't always have to optimize. Like, we don't have to optimize our well-being. And it's interesting because a lot of our marketing out there is optimize your stress, but it's really to put a different lens on it, is that we can
yeah.
leverage it and we can learn from it and we can be with it rather than have to do something with it all the time. And
Mm,
I think that's the thing, is it goes back to that age-old saying, right? We're human beings, not human doings. And
yeah,
it's funny that the biggest difference we see with like the average person versus like maybe a high performer, somebody that's like constantly in that strive thrive space where they're like trying all the time,
mm,
and like always love the achievement, is that high performers know that well-being is the foundation of everything, whereas the
yes,
average person still typically uses the well-being as like the reward for doing something.
yeah. That's
So
good.
if we put well-being first, well, then we're good, we're set. But if
Mm.
we keep putting it as the secondary thing and using it as a reward, and we say stuff like, I'll rest when I'm done, or
Yeah,
I'll slow down when things calm down, these are classic ones.
yeah,
So it's things like that is worth paying attention to. So I think
yeah.
that's the biggest trap.
Great. That's really good. Well, that's one of those things as well, is that I've noticed people have no idea about wellness or well-being sometimes, and they just think it's this woo-woo thing that doesn't
Yeah,
really apply to them, of
yeah,
course. I mean, it's to the point where if you take your health, for example, some people don't even aware that health is a really massive priority, whether
yeah,
that's your mental health or your physical health. These
yeah,
things are exceptionally, that's number one, really. And
yeah,
if you're not healthy, then you're not likely to have that, that wellness anyway. Because even like, you might not be healthy, but you can psychologically have the wellness, and people don't have the tools in their toolbox sometimes
mm,
to go into that. So yeah, that's
yeah. It's a good point, because often I like the saying when we're, I'm gonna mess up the saying now, but it's like when there's a picture in the frame and you're looking at the frame. Yeah, this has completely gone out of my brain.
oh
I've got two
no.
cats over here that are having a war next to me. But yeah, it's like when you're in the picture, you can't, when you're in the frame, you can't see the picture, something of that
Oh
effect.
yes, yes, I think I know.
Um,
Yes, yeah, you can't see
yeah,
it
so
when you're not part of. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly. So when we typically take our well-being for granted until we don't have it anymore, and
Yeah,
I think that's when it can become like you've said, almost our priorities shift, and that's where the we suddenly make it count.
yeah. Good, good. Yeah. And there is something else actually that I really would like to ask you, and this is
Yeah,
my
go for it.
truth bomb question.
Go
What's
for it.
one thing you believe about well-being that most people would disagree with?
Mm. That we're only well in the absence of stress or problems. Um, I I think that's really, really key. So I just want to say that again because I think it's really important.
Yeah, please do, please
That
do. I'm just trying to
we
digest it now.
that we are only well in the absence of stress or problems, right? So
Ah, yeah.
we can be well even during stressful times.
Mm,
And I
okay.
think being well is how we navigate those times without losing who we are in the process.
Yes.
I think that for me is a big one.
Good. And when you say without losing out, would that be something to do with identity as well? Because sometimes you can get so taken on or so stressed out or so scattered that sometimes you can actually forget your own identity or just become in that sort of tunnel vision. You're referring to
Yeah.
that, yeah?
Yeah, it's
Uh,
exactly that. Exactly that. And burnout based identity based burnout is a real phenomenon. It's something that we see often. People think they're a certain way.
yeah.
I mean, I'll use my husband as an example. He doesn't mind. He's said it plenty of times on our YouTube channel and our podcast. Is he was always nicknamed the Hulk because he was suffering from chronic stress for a long period of time. That affected his health in many ways, but mentally he had less patience. He was angry all the time, and it became this running joke that he was the Hulk.
Oh,
This
really?
was kind of before we were together, but we kind of know some similar people that kind of work together, and it's just almost a funny thing now because he's
Mm,
so not like it now. But that's because he almost adopted that identity. That's just who he was. I'm not a
Yeah.
patient person. I get triggered easy. I get, angry if somebody doesn't do X, Y, Z.
Mm.
And you live with that for so long, you're going to feel that and you're going to
Yes.
carry that. And this is that's a lot.
Yes. Yes. I mean, as I reflect on my own life, I think, we go through different phases. And I know that when in the past, I was much more, well, one, gregarious, let's say, and then prone to be much more opinionated, much less tactful, more
Yeah,
direct,
yeah.
but in a negative way, because it's quite something people say, well, it's very good to be direct, but not to the point where I was. So we go through these identity shifts and we just accept them at the time. So yeah, no, that's so true. So I'm glad you used your husband as an example. That's as well, and that you can do that. So that's brilliant. Yeah, that's good. Good. I have some rapid fire round questions here. And so, Charlotte, it's a quick shift here, really. In actual
Yeah,
fact, we are on to that round. So,
yeah,
short
ready.
answers, more or less like the first instinct. So one habit that gives you the biggest energy boost in 2 minutes, or
Movement,
under 2 minutes. Sorry.
movement, but particularly to music, if it's available. But
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
my
Good.
body,
So,
dancing, shaking, anything.
do you do that? Do you actually get up there and dance and just put a little section of music,
Yeah,
or do you have a playlist ready to go?
absolutely. Not necessarily a playlist ready to go, but I'll typically have music on when I can,
Yeah.
just kind of anyway, when I'm doing certain things. But it's more just the movement, get up, shake, dance. I
Yeah.
really can't dance at all. I've probably got the worst rhythm. They say there's only a small percentage of people that are tone deaf. I'm one of them. Uh,
No.
but I know it's good for me. If I need a quick boost,
Yeah.
what for
No,
sure.
but that's a great example, and I did a podcast way back on the joy of music in movement or something like that. And one of the things that you said that you're one of these people, these few people that can't. I admire them. I don't know how people can dance out of time. It's a skill. It really is.
I'll take that. I'll remind other people of that
It's
when they're laughing at me
incredible.
dancing.
Look at this.
I'll take
It's a
it.
4/4 time, but I'm actually I'm boogieing it off a four. I'm at 3.5 beats per minute.
I'll take that as a compliment, Alan.
Okay, good. And another thing I'd like to ask you, an effective way to reset a bad day fast.
Shake off the body first thing,
Yeah.
and reflect on the lessons, and then how I'm going to do something different, like future intentions, if you like.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Good.
yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
And one well-being trend that's overrated.
Touch on this earlier. Biohacking, right?
Oh,
Is people? Yeah,
we
go
did.
on.
Did we touch on that?
We kind
Oh,
of did when we were talking about
yeah.
tracking and
Yeah, you're
devices.
right.
So I
Actually, yeah, we
think that's
did.
kind of what I mean by that. I am a fan of biohacking and what it can do for you, but
Yeah.
as a trend, I think people are jumping on these like crazy things. Taking 101 supplements. They don't know why. They don't know why they're taking them. They're not getting their basic diet right
Yeah.
first. Jumping into cold plunge or light exposure without understanding why and what it's doing and what
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
habits they've got, and even doing those things, then there's this not being able to answer, well, what's actually draining you, and
Yeah.
what are your symptoms, why are you doing it, and not being able to answer those questions, and really being able to look at yourself holistically. I think that
Yes.
is I think it's quite damaging.
Yes.
They're like overrated.
I think it's funny because I've spoken to a couple of biohackers as guests on the show, and if you're coming at it from certain angles, I mean they're thinking about longevity and all the little
Yeah,
hacks that they can put into place, and
yeah,
talking about devices and very much in that space. But they
yeah,
even they recognise that this is only like 10% of it. The other
yeah.
90% is it's actually movement. It's your exercise, it's your nutrition, and so it's really they accept that, but this extra 10% they are quite happy to talk about. And as you mentioned,
I,
one of, sorry,
I think it's great. And
yeah,
I do think biohacking has got its place. And I love a biohack. I think there's, everybody can have and benefit from like a biohack stack of things that they do or things they
yeah,
can integrate into their lives. It's when we do it blindly because it's almost the new thing to buy. Do you remember
yeah,
like years ago? I don't know if they still have it. Like, I don't know, was it called QVC or something. You know, where you buy stuff off the telly and there'd be
Yes.
like some weird invention that somebody's selling because you can like lose like 3 stone in 10 minutes.
Oh
It's
yeah, yeah.
it's almost being sold to people that way when it comes
Yes.
to a lot of the biohacking things. So with the right education and with the right prescription, I think it's fantastic and there's a
Yeah.
huge place for it. I'm just concerned that we're going a bit too far one way than the other, I guess.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, it's what seems to work for. I mean, I've got my sort of supplement stack, which is probably 7 or 8 pills a day, which I do take, but I will swear by them. But they seem to work, so I'll
Yeah,
go with that. And
perfect.
then I will think about, well, does that red light therapy work or not? If
Yeah.
I've had a fall recently, a paddle, so I thought, well, I'll do a bit of research on
Mm,
that. Maybe that will reduce the inflammation on.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm
But
open
you
to
question
it.
it. You
Yeah,
ask the question, does it work? And then you do your research on it, right? That's perfect. That's the
yeah,
perfect way to do biohacking, right? It's the perfect way to do anything when it comes to your health and well-being.
exactly.
So that's brilliant. It's when we use things mindlessly, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah, good. And I have my little optional fourth question here for you. Wasn't sure we've
Nice.
got time. We're doing well. You're flying through this. Fantastic.
On the
You
clock.
speak fast. That's good. So
I don't know if it's a good thing. People have to but do the playback speed like zero point 0.5.
yeah, yeah. No, I must admit, I'm thinking, crikey, this recording's going fast. Is she on double speed time or something?
It got me a peak time, 8 o'clock in the evening nearly.
I'm used to sort of speaking more, sort of like more methodically. But yeah, okay, great. So,
Bringing the energy tonight.
yeah. Good.
Apologies.
I always want to keep podcasts as short as possible, so you're the perfect guest for that. Great. And we've covered so much. So this is the other one anyway. So fill in the blanks. Busy professionals don't need more. They need more. I'll repeat that so you can fill in the blank. Busy
Yeah.
professionals don't need more.
Advice.
They need more.
Alignment.
Yeah, good. I like it. I love
Yeah.
it.
Has anybody
That's
said that before on your podcast?
no, I've
No.
never asked it
Oh,
before.
interesting. Oh, okay, fair enough.
I never ask the same questions. I might have the same rapid fire thing, but I never ask the same questions.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, I do believe that busy professionals, most people, to be honest, don't need more advice. They just need more alignment in their
Yeah,
decisions, in their choices, in
yeah.
themselves. Yeah, that's all we need.
I love that. I really do. I think that's brilliant because it's something which you've got to be careful of somebody who's in this space about taking that mantra of giving too much advice or feeling that you are somebody who has that authority and oh God, you got to catch myself. I don't want to be out there too preachy.
Yeah.
So it's good that you talk about not the advice. It's more about the alignment, about identifying how to align. I really think that's a fantastic point. So I'm
Thank
glad you
you.
made it. Yeah.
I think it's necessary in this space, right? When you
Mm,
look at health and well-being, the classic answer people hate is it depends. But actually,
I hate that
we're
answer.
so
Yeah.
individual that it's important that we consider ourselves in the process of it all.
Mm,
And I think often there's it, especially with the world of that AI now, is like you put in one question, it never answers, it depends. It will give you like the top 10 things that it can just
yeah.
randomly find.
Yes.
And we get it more. We're already getting more and more information. There's more and more consumption, and
Yeah.
we need to be able to decipher it if we're gonna stay sane and if we're
Mm,
gonna get what we actually need. So I
yeah.
think it's now more true than ever. There's so much advice out there that we have to take agency, and it can be hard to do that sometimes, but
Yes.
just notice and see what resonates.
Mm,
If somebody's listening to this, that's a load of rubbish, no problem. Go and
exactly.
find what makes sense for you. But there'll be other people like, oh yeah, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we have to start following,
Yeah.
because there's an alignment there, right? Um there's the ability to be able to resonate with what's actually happening and
Yeah.
within yourself, and then with the tools that you're looking for.
Brilliant. Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. That's such a great point to actually almost bring the podcast to an end. But before we go, what's the best place for people to contact you, Charlotte? So if they'd like to reach out or find out more about what you do, what would be the best
Yep.
place?
The name of obviously my company is called The Wellness Theory, so you can search that anywhere on social media. Thewellnesstheory.com, you'll be able to find an assessment that you can go and do, where you can actually look at perhaps some of your day-to-day stressors. You can look at where some stress might be stored in the body, in your health, and then what are some of those root causes. We talked about like identity and some of those deeper things. You'll be able to score yourself and actually understand where your biggest opportunities are for your well-being, and that's something that's completely free. Go ahead, do it as many times as you want.
I love a little quiz like that. I really do. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. So it's something that's instant, and you can find out and you can see where you might need to have a little bit more work or reflection on it. So that's really good. Yeah.
Find out what you're doing well.
Yeah, brilliant. So anyway, your story is a real powerful reminder that, I guess true well-being isn't about kind of pushing harder. It's about mastering those fundamentals earlier enough to prevent burnout, so that the success and health can flourish together. I guess that's really that's what I would take away from what we've talked about. So so thank you so much, Charlotte. Before we actually go, is there anything else you'd like to add, or are we kind of good?
No, I mean we're good. I like that you've got so much time. You asked me if there's any more. There's one thing that I I'll plant a seed and leave your listeners with, is that the mission I'm on is to know that when we're healthy and well, we can be a force for good in the world. Like when we're at our best, we do our best, right? We show up as our best for others, whether that be your own loved ones, your neighbor, like wider causes, like whatever that is. So I think like if it's tough right now with whatever you're going through or whatever you're, trying to navigate, remember who you're doing it for and why you're doing it, because I think that can spur you on, and it also could just really widen your own personal ripple effects and your own power being here. So I just leave you with that, I guess.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. And well, I'll bid you farewell. And thank you so much for joining us today, Charlotte. Okay, so it's goodbye from me and goodbye from Charlotte. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did when we recorded that back in early May. A huge thanks to Charlotte Stebbing-Mills for joining me and sharing so much practical wisdom from both her professional experience and her personal journey. One of my biggest takeaways from this conversation is that well-being isn't necessarily about doing more. It's about identifying what's already draining our energy and having the courage to let it go. Not always easy. And as Charlotte reminded us, busy professionals, they don't need more advice, they need more alignment. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following the show, sharing it with a friend or a colleague, and even better, leaving a quick review. It really does help more people discover Busy Pro Fast Wellness. Until next time, stay healthy, stay sharp, and remember, small actions applied consistently can make a massive difference. Goodbye for now.